Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to my home in Livingston, Montana. Okay, while I'm in a storytelling mood, I've got another tale to tell you folks. That is, if you got patience enough to sit through my, jargon or whatever have you. This particular story here is not a childhood story. This happened, I know doggone well, in either 1997, 98, or 99. One of them 3 years for sure. Okay, myself, my wife, and my family, we were all living up in a place called West Yellowstone, Montana. West Yellowstone, Montana is a little tourist trap that's right at the west gate of Yellowstone National Park. Some of you people know where I'm talking about. Some of you people don't. You have to look it up on the map. I'm not going to waste a bunch of time explaining where West Yellowstone, Montana's at. Anyway, right outside of West Yellowstone, Montana, there's this lake called Hebgen Lake. It's actually not a lake. It's a reservoir. It's got a dam on it, but everybody calls it Hebgen Lake. It's really the Madison River that's been dammed up. And the fishing at times on Hebgen Lake could get really, 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 really good, especially with bait fishing, specifically using worms, which in the world of fly fishing, which I'm definitely part of, is a no-no. But back in them days, I had a family, and I didn't really care how I caught them, fly fishing, bait fishing, lure fishing. It didn't make any difference to me. As long as I had a trout on the end of my fishing pole, I was happy. Okay, this Hebgen Lake was a weird kind of a lake. It was only like 1.5 miles long and like 10 miles long. It was just really, like I say, the Madison River backed up. And to give you an exact idea, the Hebgen Lake, Hebgen Reservoir is just right up above Quake Lake. That, just before you go down into the Madison Valley. All right. My mother called me up this one particular day. It was in the spring of the year. And she says, Jim, now I got to be careful here and everything because my mom's passed on. She passed on in 2000 and, let's see, I got to get this right, 2006. And prior to her passing on, my stepdad had passed on. So my mom was kind of dating around. Let's just put it that way. Anyway, she was dating this fella, and I really don't want to say his name because it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to call him Fred. His name was no more Fred than the Man in the Moon, but that's what I'll call him. Anyway, my mom calls me up and she says, Jim, she says, how's the fishing up there in West Yellowstone? How's the fishing on Hebgen Lake? And blah, blah, blah. And acting like a detective and asking me all these weird questions because she knew doggone well I was a chronic fisherman. She ought to know. She raised me, So I gave her the report and told her, especially in the spring of the year, the bait fishing got really good up there when the water was still low before spring runoff. You know what I mean? And you could go out there and use a slip sinker, for you guys that know what I'm talking about, and a barrel swivel. And what I used to do is I'd put a big old hairy nightcrawler on a hook, and I'd pump it up with air so this whole rigging would float up, about 18 inches off the bottom. That's where I wanted to see that nightcrawler. And a lot of times I'd put a little corky on my line before I tied my hook on. White corkies, red corkies, yellow corkies, all kinds of different colors I used. That was the setup anyway, So, I'm saying this, I've got to tell you this fishing method or this story isn't going to make any sense. But what you would do is you take it, what I would used to do is I used to have, I still own them. I got a pair of really heavy full-length neoprene waders. And I had them for a number of reasons. First of all, they kept me warm, and I could wade out there into the lake, wherever I was fishing, and take and flip the bail back on my spinning rod, and just flip that bait rig out there, and then walk back to shore. And I used to have these, pole holders, okay? And I'd set the pole in the pole holder, and I'd flip the bail back over, and I'd tighten up the line, just until it got, to where it was starting to pull on that slip sinker. And then I would take between the first and second eye down at the bottom, I would hang a bobber about this big around with a swivel on it that was open, that was bent in a hook. Just for a hanger. I'd hang it on there and pull it down about this far. And what that was is a strike indicator. Them fish would come along and start nibbling on that night crawler that was sitting out there floating around like that, and that old bobber would start doing this number. And the only way those fish were pretty smart up there, because they were what I used to call tourist fish. They seen a lot of tourists in this all through the year. Even ice hole fishing, but not ice hole fishing so much, but especially during the summer and whatnot have you. But when that old bobber would start doing this, when it would give you the indication that a trout was mouthing your night crawler, you had to pluck that bobber, that strike indicator, off your line, and I just throw it down on the ground real quick, and I tighten up my line pretty expeditiously, and I'd watch the tip of that pole, and when that pole started doing that number, I just hang the iron to them. Hang the iron right to them pigs, man. You couldn't be out there screwing around, because some of them trout would run 4, 5, 6 pounds, A lot of them that I caught were in that 18 to 20 inch class and all that other stuff. So anyway, my mom calls me up, and she's wanting me to be her guide, which I didn't have any problems with that, because I took my mom fishing on several occasions, but she wanted to bring her boyfriend Fred along. And I told her, I said, does this bozo even know how to fish, because I knew him and everything, and I can't really say as I was in love too much with this guy, because he was kind of dingy, I guess I shouldn't say that, but he wasn't on the same wavelength that I'm on. Not that I'm smart or a genius or anything like this. And she goes, well, Jim, she says, he just got out of surgery just a week or so ago. He had a hernia surgery, and I have to be able to, I need to have you take me somewhere where I can take him fishing where we don't have to walk. Boy, whenever somebody says that to me when it comes to fishing, I just want to, people that are unwilling to walk ain't got no business fishing. Not the way I fish. I seen the time when I was younger, I'd walk 2 or 3 miles to go fishing, or I'd fish up a river, say for a mile or so, hitting various holes along the way. And so I kind of raked my mom over the coals. I was trying to get out of this thing, I didn't like the idea of me having to drive somewhere where I could just put him on a sunny beach where he didn't have to walk and all this other stuff. So finally she just kept on me and on me and on me till I relented to take this fool fishing. So anyway, they show up at my place on this one particular afternoon or evening or whatever have you. So I sit down with old Fred and I ask him, I said, you have any idea what the hell you're doing here? More or less. I didn't put it like that, but I started picking his brains about what he knew about fishing and everything. And he drags out this old Eagle Claw fly or fishing pole, a spinning rod, this old Eagle Claw fiberglass jobber, which is all right with me. I didn't really care because the way we were fishing, you didn't need nothing that fancy anyway. And he had some god-awful 8-pound test line. I never fished with anything over 6-pound test because I wanted thin lines so I could be able to fool them trout. Because them trout up there were smart. Well, they still are, But he had some good, so I explained to him what we needed to do the next day, and I used to call them bait rigs fish traps, because you were really just set fishing, bank fishing, whatever you want to call it, with this rig I just explained to you. So he's going, yeah, okay, Jim, I understand, and all this other stuff. So I go out to Hebgen Lake, and there's a lot of places that you can go on that Hebgen Lake. because you got the Madison arm of Hebgen Lake, you got Rainbow Point, you got the north side, south side. So I had to drive around looking for a place that we weren't going to get our pickups buried. Because my mom and old Fred there, they were in his pickup and I was in my pickup. So I was on the Madison arm of Hebgen Lake, I remember, and I was able to weasel in without getting stuck because the water was low, but that sand was still real deep. And you could get yourself so buried out there that, only God could help you, So anyway, we get all set up. We got our rig setting out there and drug out the old lawn chairs. This is a lazy man's fishing, by the way. The only reason why I do it is because it produced a lot of big trout. Otherwise, I wouldn't be fishing like this, So I get all lined up, I get my rig and I throw it out there. And I helped old Fred there with, his situation. I got him all square around. I got my mom all square around. So my mom's sitting down, say maybe 20, 30 feet away from me. And right next to me is sitting old Fred there. And there I was, So we'd been there for about a half an hour and weren't seeing no action, And so pretty soon, I look over to my left there, and here's old Fred in his chair. And I got my mom's attention, and I went like that, because my mom knew that I didn't like crap like this. Anybody that went fishing with me that was very inattentive and not paying attention to what they were doing, the task of fishing, never went fishing with me again. But that's what this dude was doing. He was sleeping, And all of a sudden, I seen that bobber of his, start doing this, up and down. There was definite indication they had a fish on. And all of a sudden, man, I said, hey, Fred. And he, and pretty soon that bobber just goes flying up in the air, clear off the pole, clear off the line and everything. And I went running over there. I said, Fred! Right in his ear. I said, you got a fish on! And all this stuff, and stumbling around. He jumped up and he grabbed his pole out of the pole holder, and I seen that fish roll out there, and I got right up in his face, and I said, look here, pal. I said, you got a big one on. I could tell. I know, I've been fishing long enough. And he was doing all kinds of crazy stuff, like running backwards, reeling, and going backwards. You know what I mean? That is something you don't do. You always take the pike to the fish. And this guy he had his drag all screwed up, and I'm actually reaching in there and loosening things up and getting right in his ear and saying, look at pal, you don't straighten up your act, and you're not going to get this fish. I'm just about like that, and here's this guy. Ain't got no time for this. I ain't got no time for this kind of foolishness. So anyway, I finally got his reel set right and everything. I said, okay, now all you got to do is just play him and get him in close enough, and I'll help you get him. Because I had my big neoprene waders on, all I did is I waded out to water that was about up to my knees or so, and when he got that fish in close enough, I just reached down there and got it right between the gills. That's the best way to get them, especially if you're going to keep them but not release them. And I grabbed up this big piece of meat. This here was a 6.5 pound German brown trout. One of them big old meat-eating cruisers, you know what I mean? But it was an absolute miracle. A miracle that old Fred there got that fish, So anyway, after all that excitement, we decided to go home, because there was enough fish there to feed 2 families. 6 pounds of trout is a lot of trout, 6.5 pushing 7. So anyway, I told my mother in private, I said, don't never bring that guy fishing with me again. This guy's got his head up his derriere. He was stumbling over backwards, fell over his chair. This is not good. This is not good at all. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that's my fishing story from the 97, 98, 99, right in there, Hebgen Lake, Montana. Thank you very much for visiting me in my home. Take care of yourselves, and I shall see you on down the trail. Adios, my friends.